time for Global Insight, where we speak to experts from around the world on issues making headlines. North Korea on Sunday fiercely criticised South Korea, the United States and Japan as the three nations came together to boost their trilateral military ties against the North's nuclear and missile threats. Pyongyang warned that the move calls for the regime to reinforce its own military capability amid weeks of speculation by experts that the regime is in fact gearing up for its 7th nuclear test. We discussed the latest developments with Dr. Bennett, Policy Analyst at RAND Corporation, and Professor Jung, Professor at the University of North Korean Studies. Very warm welcome to you both. Thank you for joining us this morning. And my first question to you, Dr. Bennett. Now, North Korea says that the trilateral cooperation between Seoul, Washington and Tokyo materialises Americans' plan for an Asian NATO. Now, do you think the regime is going to use this as a mandate for scaling up its provocations?
Well, North Korea looks for lots of rationale for scaling up provocations, so they would do it whether or not there had been meetings going on. They would be working on that. I think we have to recognize in this case, though, that South Korea-Japan cooperation is only a part of what the United States is working in the region. And also that South Korea and Japan are working. They participated in the NATO summit. Other countries from Asia joined them. There's increasing cooperation among the countries around the periphery of North Korea and China. And I think North Korea is going to find that very disagreeable and try to take action against it and certainly complain a lot about it.
And Professor Kim, well, there are definitely concerns that North Korea is going to scale up its provocations. And well, according to Daily NK, top Workers' Party officials in North Korea, they discussed targeting the Yongsan presidential office, saying that the regime could hit it within 3 minutes. Now, does it actually have the capability to do that?
So as far as the conventional capability is concerned, that statement is far from, say, credible, because it's true that most of the conventional capabilities now concentrate on the DMZ area. So they can target the Yongsan area, including the presidential office, but the quality of the conventional capability of North Korea has been deteriorated. So I think that's more like the rhetorical threat against the new government of South Korea, as well as the ROK-US alliances. But if the North Korea can acquire the so-called the tactical nuclear capability through the 7th the nuclear test, then story will be dramatically changed. So if North Korea has the say tactical nuclear capability, then that kind of rhetorical threat now become in the future more credible one.
Professor Kim, when North Korea does conduct its 7th nuclear test, then it may be able to produce small tactical warheads that could be loaded onto a short-range ballistic missile system. And well, it's KN-23, though, with its 600-kilometer shooting range, that could strike any part of South Korea. So would our current missile defense systems work effectively against this kind of threat?
So thus far, the South Korea's nuclear deterrence system is based on so-called three-pronged defense strategy, which is based on basically conventional capability. The first pillar of that is so-called kill chain, which means basically the preemptive strike strategy, which has some deficiency in terms of detection as well as the implementation. And second pillar will be the KAMD, so aka the Korean Aerial Missile Defense, which is also now getting dubious for the present situation, because the North Korea is now developing the hypersonic as well as the multiple the vehicle, the capability here. So the only thing that the North Korea can have some serious consideration is so-called KMPR, which is the Korean Mass Punishment and Retaliation strategy, which is basically the decapitation strategy. So as far as the KMPR seems credible for the North Korea, then there will be some the stable deterrence situation in the Korean Peninsula. But at the same time, we have to recognize that there's some incomplete and deficiency of some the missile defense the system as well as the preemptive strike in terms of the conventional capability of South Korea.
Right, and Dr. Bennett, US allies like South Korea and Japan, they've been very alarmed at the amount of short-range missiles that the North has been launching, which could easily reach both countries, of course. And while some are still questioning the promise of extended deterrence for US allies, those that rely on America's nuclear umbrella. And with the redeployment of tactical weapons to the Korean Peninsula seemingly out of the question, what other options are available? Would a system like the European Phased Adaptive Approach missile defense be somewhat of a plausible option?
Well, we have to recognize that the European phased defense system is based upon the SM-3 interceptor. The SM-3 is designed to be an exoatmospheric interceptor. It means it's intercepting very high altitude, 80 or 100 kilometers or more in altitude. The KN-23, which North Korea has been testing, only goes up to 50 or 60 kilometers. Therefore, it would not be going within the range of the SM-3 unless substantial changes were made to it. Instead, we need a mixed defensive system. The missile defense needs to involve some amount of Patriot capability, THAAD capability, which goes down to 30 kilometers altitude and could certainly address the KN-23. Also, some amount of SM-6, a different version of the SM-3 missile. So a different mix, but that still doesn't mean that the U.S. is not willing to offer extended deterrence. U.S. extended deterrence is extraordinarily powerful. The United States, for example, could take one of its submarines with nuclear weapons on it in the Pacific and dedicate it to North Korea. Much as the U.S. did in Europe during the Cold War, it dedicated several submarines to supporting NATO. So that kind of dedication could be done and not put nuclear weapons on the peninsula where North Korea could target them. There's lots of options available to the U.S. I think extended deterrence is very dependable right now.
And Professor Kim, what do you see as the possible options? Is trust towards extended deterrence still an issue for South Korea and Japan?
Yeah, first of all, we have to admit that there's no 100% certainty about the extended deterrence. That's true. But we have to also consider the consequence of, say, for example, abandoning South Korea, Japan from the perspective of the United States. That means the total collapse of the global extended deterrence system, especially in relations with the alliances, not only in East Asia, but also the other regions in the global area here. So in that sense, I think the United States has the huge stake in maintaining and increasing the credibility of the extended deterrence. And in that sense, I think the South Korea still have some good sense of the maintaining the extended deterrence provided by United States, and the ROK as well as the United States need to repeatedly confirm the credibility of the extended deterrence provided by the United States.
And Professor Kim, well, during the NATO summit in Madrid, Fumio Kishida, in a trilateral summit with the leaders of the US and South Korea, he floated the idea of holding a trilateral military drill. And, well, do you think that's likely to happen? I mean, what are the next steps for the Seoul, Tokyo and Washington collaboration in addressing the North Korea threat?
Yes, I think so. The only thing that is still need to see is the timing of the joint drill. between the ROK, Japan, and the United States here. And the only obstacle for that kind of trilateral military cooperation is basically the domestic political backlash expected in South Korea as well as in Japan. For Japan, I think it is critical for the Kishida government to win the upper house election coming in the July 10th. If they can get a comfortable majority in that election, then they can have more room to maneuver in achieving the trilateral cooperation, especially the cooperation with South Korea. At the same time, the South Korea, the Yoon administration need to elaborate more sophisticated domestic policy in order to increase the support of the new government. Otherwise, there will be still remaining risks to resume the trilateral military cooperation from the perspective of the South Korean people.
And Dr. Bennett, are you optimistic about the prospects for trilateral cooperation between Seoul, Washington and Tokyo? And well, it seems that South Korea has shown a lot of enthusiasm towards this, but there still seems to be historical issues, the upcoming upper house elections in Japan that might slow things down in terms of improving South Korea-Japan ties. But would you say that the mood in Tokyo is changing overall?
I think the mood in Tokyo is changing, but it's a question of how rapidly it changes. Politics are politics, and politics are always a difficulty in trying to manage relationships. I think, however, that we need to increasingly talk about how critical that cooperation is. The United States needs to be able to send its forces to Korea in a contingency. Any crisis, it needs to be able to do that, and it is almost impossible to do that without Japanese support of airfields and ports. There's just not enough infrastructure in South Korea for that kind of deployment. So this is not only something where we're interested in the cooperation, we need the cooperation. It's the best way to deal with North Korea, to put pressure on North Korea. Meanwhile, the US and South Korea need to also continue working hard, as we are doing now with the exercises that have been ongoing. This is an effort where building alliances take effort. Politics can get in a way for a while, but we need to work at it.
And Dr. Bennett, well, with key elections coming up in the US as well, the midterm elections, well, many wonder if there's going to be much progress on the North Korea front with for President Biden. And well, it's an age-old question. It's a question we ask time and time again. But what is the US approach to North Korea? Are we going back to strategic patience, or are we taking a new approach here?
Well, I guess I would say it's not so much a matter of going back as breaking from it. A year or so, we've basically been stuck on strategic patience. I think this is a question, though, where President Yoon could have a tremendous possibility of action. If he and his advisors can put together a strategy to increase the deterrence of North Korea, to move to a more stern deterrence, as was talked about in the summit meeting between President Biden and President Yoon, I think this is an opportunity where President Yoon could come up with that strategy, and the U.S. would probably be very anxious to support it. The U.S. is busy with a lot of other issues right now, and this may be a time for South Korea to take more initiative.
And Dr. Kim, in the meantime, what are ways that South Korea can increase its own military capabilities against incoming threats from the north, other than ramping up its fighter jets, for instance?
So the new government in South Korea now assume their power, basically criticizing some more appeasing attitude of the former the government, the Moon administration, toward the North Korea. So I think this is the good opportunity for the South Korean government to say make some redirection of the North Korea policy in a more balanced way, as well as have better positioning in increasing the capability of the South Korean, the defense, the infrastructure or the other things here. So in that sense, I want to see the UN administration to take this opportunity for their own the political capital as well as the national interest in the near future.
Well, that was Dr. Bruce Bennett, Policy Analyst at RAND Corporation, and Kim Jung, Professor at the University of North Korean Studies. Thank you both so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.